British MPs have voted in favour of a controversial bill. It will eventually allow medically assisted dying for terminally ill adults in England and Wales under strict conditions. The legislation must still be examined by the parliamentary committees, and amendments may be put forward. CBC's Crystal Gamansing has more from outside the UK Parliament.
This bill was considered once-in-a-generation legislation because of the monumental impact it could have on society. After 5 hours of debate, members of Parliament voted in favour of this legislation put forward in a private member's bill. The vote was 330 yeses, 275 noes. This issue has been contentious with a lot of emotion on both sides. And in fact, the Labour MP, Kim Leadbeater, who put the bill forward, made a point when the debate started in the House of Commons saying that this was a complex issue, but complex issues is exactly what MPs are supposed to deal with. There has been a lot of emotion inside the House of Commons, but also outside. Both sides were here today trying to make their voices heard. Those opposed to the legislation made a point of saying they saw it as a slippery slope. In fact, they are worried about it progressing to the sort of legislation there is in Canada. I heard from a number of individuals, one of them, Anna Laundrie. She talked about the fact that she's disabled, and until that disabled people have access to what they need, they could fear being a burden and therefore coerced into using this legislation down the line. Another individual, 28-year-old Rensa Gaunt, talked about the Canadian system, fearing that eventually it will move towards that system. Right now, here in the UK, as the legislation is written, it will only be for adults in England and Wales who are over the age of 18 and terminally ill. But there is a lot of fear around what will come in a year, in a month, in 6 years when it comes to this legislation.
Ordinarily, British people would look to Canada as a really progressive country, but in terms of assisted dying, it's actually something that we're really scared of. Initially, it was just for terminal illness, and now it's people who are suffering. Well, when many people look at disabled people and how we live our lives, they think that we must be suffering. And when, as Anna says, we're not given the tools that we need to have a good life, and actually that's where the suffering comes from. Being disabled is not a intrinsically negative thing, and we can live good lives.
This isn't the first time MPs have had to grapple with this legislation. It was put forward back in 2015, but back then it was struck down. A very different situation here today after a very long and emotional debate. Those in favor of this legislation see this as a step forward, a way of giving adults autonomy and some control as to when to end their lives, knowing that it will end eventually. So there was a lot of jubilation, a lot of cheers, the fact that they are now able to have some control.
I feel very passionately that we just have our own choice. My best friend died crying in agony, begging us to put an end to her life. It's just everybody's personal choice, and I feel very, very strongly about it.
There are a cohort of people that this scope of the bill defines very clearly, where palliative care might not be enough for them. My mum was one of those people. There are people with conditions where palliative care simply won't give them the relief that they need.
This bill will move forward, but it will take many months and even longer before it becomes legislation. Officials on both sides say there is more work to be done, and there will be more advocacy work as well. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.